everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Coffee Chat Club. I'm your host, and today we are kicking off a brand new series called Green Careers Unlocked. I'll be honest, I'm feeling that mix of excitement and nerves that comes with starting something that really matters. The series has been quietly brewing in the back of my mind, and it finally feels like the right time to bring it to life. You know that still moment before our new chapter begins. That's exactly what this feels like. If you ever found yourself wondering, how do I even break into sustainability? Or is it too late to pivot? Then you are in the right place. In this episode of Green Careers Unlocked, we are diving into a story that might just shift how you think about career pivots. Meet Monika, Senior ESG Specialist at Bell. Her journey into sustainability didn't start with a fancy title or a traditional path. In fact, she began her career deep in field operation and process improvement at Bell, which is far away from anything that looked like ESG on paper. But instead of waiting for the perfect sustainability role to appear, she carved her own path. She found ways to bring ESG into the work she was already doing. Her story is a real masterclass in persistence, creativity, and proving that you don't need the right job title to start doing meaningful work. So whether you are on your commute, doing dishes, or awkwardly pretending to look busy at a cafe, plug in, settle down, and let's dive into the story of how one unexpected job title led Monika to a career she is truly passionate about. This is Coffee Chat Club Green Career Series, and this is episode 1. So to kick things off, let's start by your journey at Bell. It's really interesting to see your journey that you started as Manager, Control Center, Process Improvement, and Project Delivery. I know, such a long title, no? Which I'm pretty sure has no relation to the ESG or the sustainability space. And then you transferred or transitioned to the ESG space inside. So I'm really curious to know that what made you switch from your field operations job to the ESG side, and how does this transition looks like to you?
Yeah, good question. I would say if someone would be starting their career today, probably they would be taking a different path than I did. In my case, when I graduated from McGill, I was the first cohort that did the Managing for Sustainability program. And they actually launched it when I was halfway through my studies. And back then, there was not a lot of roles of sustainability in a corporate setting. All sustainability related roles, at least in Quebec and Montreal, were mostly more science focused. So to me, the reason why I started at Bell really in these roles that were not directly linked to environment was because there was no job openings. So I said, okay, I need to still start doing something. And I saw that Bell was doing a lot of efforts for already a few decades in the environment space. So I said, at least I'm going to work for a company that's doing some efforts. Maybe one day I'll end up in that team. And I started as really in the field operations, working on different processes and improving the process really of the operations of a telecom company. So I learned a lot about the telecom industry and all of that. But deep down, I was wishing, how can I make my job more tailored to a sustainability focus? And that's when I started taking my own initiative until that moment would come. So I started doing things that was not even in my job description. I started doing contests with field technicians for them to better recycle their waste, to reduce cost by breaking down cardboard boxes so that we can save truck rolls, so saving greenhouse gas emissions, and also maximizing the space where we put the cardboard boxes after they install telecom equipment. And I remember pitching it to the vice president back then, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. I launched a whole contest. I reached out to the brand team. We created an environment logo for like the operations team, and we created like a whole brand. I started doing videos. I contacted this video studio group at Bell, because Bell is not only a telco but also a media company, so we have a lot of that as well. And I just by myself was reaching out to different departments to kind of create an engagement initiative. And I would say this is what really made people like surprised, like, wow, okay, this is fun, and people got into it, and we actually reduced tremendously the impact through this kind of contest launch. And it's through there that then the corporate environment team, the corporate sustainability team at Bell Canada, which is actually a very small team considering that we're over 44,000 employees at Bell Canada, that this team noticed me and they said, wow, who's this girl in the operations doing these initiatives on environment? So that's when like they called me in, they wanted to learn more about what I was doing. And that's when to me, I was like, wow, okay, finally I have my door in to get to know the team. There was still no opening, but to me, I felt I was getting closer to getting to this team. And then, just with patience and with time, eventually one of the team members left on maternity and there was an opening, but a temporary role in the team. And right away they called me and they said, Monika, we want you to come in our team. We saw what you did in the operations. It wasn't even your job to do this. And we want people like you in our team. So I got the role. After that, they just kept me, and now it's been almost 5 to 6 years that I've been in this corporate sustainability team, and then evolved through that team as well. So I started mostly working on environmental management programs. So really, how do we put a program in place to be certified for ISO 14001 for our environmental impact, but also then for our energy impact with 50001? So put in place a whole system to gather data across the company on waste, electronic waste, on water, on our impact for energy, on our greenhouse gas emissions, and many other impacts on energy and biodiversity and all the sustainability soup, and then getting certified, doing audits throughout that. So I did that for maybe 2-3 years, and then ESG became a big hit. I would say maybe 3 or 5 years ago at most. ESG took a tremendous importance that ESG was not really in the language of people just even 5 or less than 10 years ago. So that's when a new role was created and I moved into this role. And that's when I completely shift from a more governance on environmental impact to really a reporting on non-financial data towards investors on what do we do for the company that adds value, but that it's not a financial number. So we're talking greenhouse gas emissions, waste, diversity too. So the whole ESG means the whole environmental, social data, and how we put a governance and maturity and a program around that to maintain it across the company. And that's when I took more courses on around ESG, and just like everyone else in the space, we're still going through the weaves and the waves of it evolving as we speak, even month over month.
Interesting. So you were not even in sustainability when you started and then switched. It's really interesting. And how big is the your team right now? Like, I know you mentioned the ways, the governance, the ESG side. So is it still like a small team, or it's like a big team with different roles?
So I'd say right now in our company, we are about less than 20, let's say, environmental specialists. But 20 people, over 45,000 employees, and the impact of this national company is, to me, I find that's quite a small team. You know, when we compare operational teams, we're talking about the thousands of employees that work in other departments. So it's a very small, let's say, department relatively, and each person is, let's say, a specialist or is prime on a specific topic. So we have a waste specialist that manages all the waste in the company. Then we have an air emission specialist that monitors all the air emissions from our equipment. Then we have someone managing all the petroleum products to run our generators in our network. So someone just managing all that, because we're talking about thousands and thousands of equipment for each of those. We have someone managing the vehicles, thousands of vehicles, the electrification of that. So we're kind of like, each one is split through a different role. And so in total, there's about 20. But for ESG, let's say reporting. So when I say reporting, it's taking all these data on environment, on social, and all the governance, and then making a comprehensive system around that, planning a strategy that oversees the overall of all these little pieces. So I would say it's myself and I have one other person on my team. So we're just two people managing really more the umbrella of everything that's being done throughout that, and then matching it to having like a data quality around that, to reporting it to the public, to participating in how we are evaluated on ESG through different investor groups. So really having more, let's say, this investor-facing approach to how we present and gather and organize ESG data and set the strategy forward. So I also advise the company on what are our next steps, where do we need to put the effort, even educating what is ESG, because even though ESG became this big buzzword, before was sustainability, before was called corporate responsibility, so it kind of evolved through the years, but just educating on what it means inside the company and outside, and then helping teams internally how to build their way towards getting involved into more this umbrella, this governance around all this data that is non-financial.
And I'm wondering, how does your day to day look like? Say a month in your life or a week in your life as an ESG specialist. What sort of skills you are using? What sort of work you are doing? I know you already touched a little bit on the sort of work you are doing, but say a week in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So I would say a typical day in my role is maybe in a month's time, definitely every month at least, we participate in ESG evaluation. So maybe 30% of our time easily is dedicated to that. So investors are ranking our company on how are we performing on ESG information versus competitors versus the landscape. So we participate in what's often we call ESG questionnaires. So it's filling out like questions based on your public information, which then the raters, so usually they're investor-based rating agencies that then put a score relative to your peers. And then you want to understand your score. Why did I do good here, not good there? And then you have to benchmark to understand. And usually we have to bring answers internally and also to the leaders of the company to provide explanation and guidance on where we should move next based on these results. So a lot of effort is put on this kind of the output of this ESG outcome and evaluation. And I would say easily half of the year, so at least 6 months of the year is the reporting season. So we're really working on this integrated report in a sense. So easily we put full time and effort on collecting this data, on going through the processes to finally produce this final report that is put into the public at the end of our fiscal year. So that's, like, I would say, easily like 50% of our time is into this. And then I would say another portion is really setting the strategy, like where are we going next, doing benchmarking exercises, what are other people doing, and easily just educating ourselves on what is happening in the ESG landscape. I would say for sure at least 10% of my time, if not 20 sometimes, is reading on what are the issues now in ESG, what's evolving right now, what are others doing, what are the new standards, what do they mean, how do we translate that. So I would say, I wouldn't say there's a year that resembles the other, and already over 3 years that I'm in this ESG role, there's not one year that looked the same as the next, because through those 3 years, there's been new evolutions in the ESG space that we're constantly doing something new. At first, it was like, okay, trying to understand ESG topics from understanding different standards, like now with the ISSB, there's a new standard, the S1 and S2 that came out. So just like on absorbing this information, translating it to us. Now we're moving, I think everyone has to move now towards controls over their data. So there's always like big projects changing year over year because the ESG landscape is changing tremendously. So there's a lot of reading, getting like having a bit this sentinel view, like you have to be able to fetch the data, read the news, look what investors are looking at, what are others doing, and being the advisor on what we should be moving forward, and then pushing the company to evolve forward. So really there's a little bit of internal lobbying, so convincing internal teams to build new processes to maybe meet this new data point, because it's not as
Yeah.
easy as saying, oh, okay, we want all these ESG data in our report, give me this data. Like teams, for the internal teams that have the data, let's say how much energy we consume, like it's a very complex process to accumulate this data. It goes through all the operations, different categories of our energy consumption, of where our greenhouse gas emissions are emitted. So it takes like a lot of comprehensive layering of people and educating on what we need and the quality, the timing. So this takes time for internal teams to mature towards a process. So you need a lot of buy-in from their leaders. So a lot of my time is sitting on meetings, doing like benchmarking evaluations and pitching it internally to teams on we need to do this, we need to get to this point, and answering their questions. Oh, why we need to do this? Oh, like this takes too much time. So we help them a little bit shaping towards this outcome. I would say in my role, you become like a super project manager because you're managing the project of the report, you're managing the projects of engaging internal teams to reach to that point and just, yeah, making it happen. So it's very chaotic, but let's say the days are very, very busy. It's very rare that we can, oh yeah, relax, everything's done. As soon as you think something's done, something new's popping out, oh, okay, there's something else we need to do.
Yeah. And I think it's also new for the different business units, right? So they are getting used to us, like us being like the ESG team or the sustainability team, reaching out to them and asking for data. But I think like after 3 or 4 years or after they understand like why we need the data, what's the purpose of the data and how we're going to use the data, they will get used to it. Like, hey, they're going to come every single year and they're going to ask us the data every single year, no matter what. So I think it's as you said, it's the landscape is evolving. We all are learning. We all are growing. So it's part of the process, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned like you spend 50% of your time in disclosures, right? Or the reporting. So for our audience, when you say disclosure, it means other than the integrated reporting, like the CDP, SASB, DJSI, these sort of disclosures, right?
So I would say the ones you mentioned, like the DGSI, S&P, there's many like Sustainalytics, MSCI, ISS,
Yeah.
all of those. To me, I see them as they evaluate our ESG performance. So to me, those are like ESG rankings,
Yeah.
where you give your input, you talk to them. So for us, we talk to MSCI, we talk to ISS, we talk to Sustainalytics. Every month we talk to these firms, or these, those that give a rating to our company, to tell them, oh no, here we do have this information, it's over here. Or, oh no, you put us here that we don't have that, but yes, we do, we have this thing. So you kind of feed them information to make their evaluation of the company more accurate. So to me, that's
Yeah.
part of like the 30% of the time. When I say 50% of my time is the reporting, it can translate to the actual output of the company. So towards an official, formal, public document or website or whatever is the format you want to present, that allows these MSCIs, S&Ps, and DGSIs, and you name it, to get the information. Because what happens is
Okay.
these DGSIs and all of those, they most of the time, it's rare. I rarely saw the case where someone takes information that is not public, but they all require publicly available information to be able to rank your company, most of them. Um,
Yeah.
with some exceptions. So for them to see it publicly, we need to make this information to the public. So we can't just work like on a PowerPoint, keep it on our desktop and send them the info through an email. It's really through this integrated annual report that we do it. So the reporting season for me, it's really preparing this integrated annual report, or whatever report the company might be doing. For sure that half of the year is to take the internal data, organize it, write it in a way, aligning it to the standards like GRI, SASB,
Yeah.
ISSB, all of those, and then sending it to the public. And once it's public, then those MSCIs and the others, they're gonna, oh, okay, BCE, Bell just published their report. We're gonna go and now evaluate their score to see if they evolved on their ESG score. And then that's when we feed them what we put publicly. So yeah, so reporting to me is creating the formal report that the company issues to the public. But this is a huge task, at least
Yeah.
for us, because it's gathering the data across all the provinces of Canada, across many different departments. We're touching two different industries. We have a lot of impacts to measure. So just like doing this process internally to make a comprehensive output, for sure this takes at least half of our time.
Yeah. And talking about telecommunications sector, as we all know, each sector has like a unique value chain or a supply chain, right? So how would you describe the current landscape of sustainability or ESG in the telecom sector? I'm wondering like what are some of the challenges or opportunities unique to the telecom sector?
So I would say, well, the telecom sector, we're not manufacturing anything or extracting raw minerals or any of that, right? So we're not producing like an end product. So in that sense, we're not the the big polluting categories such as, oil companies or other mining companies or manufacturing companies. So in that sense, I would say we're not like as scrutinized on this impact. But what we do, well, at least at Bell and most telecom companies, is deploying and running the network to allow companies to then provide the service of telecom services, so usually mobile access and home internet connectivity to customers. And through that deployment and that running, well, for the telecom industry, and the best example to know what is really the impact for each industry, I really love to refer to the SASB standards, because SASB has done a really good job at identifying what is, and now I'm introducing a new word maybe for some of the listeners, but what is material for each company based on their industry. And materiality in ESG is like is the key to knowing what you should do. So they kind of break it down on what are the key things that are most sensitive for your industry. For the telecom industry, it's really to run all this network. So for us to be able to do this podcast, connect to internet, it takes servers and energy that's like fueling all the network connectivity. So energy is a huge topic of ESG for telecom companies. So energy consumption is a big one. Depending how the network is deployed, and in our case, it's our own operations. It's internally to Bell. We provide the network. So we have field technicians that move in cars to go to the customers and install their services. So in that sense, there's a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. How are you transporting these individuals to make it happen?
Yeah.
And obviously everything related to electronic waste, obviously we're selling cell phones, we're reselling iPhones and Samsungs and all of that. So just understanding where that electronic waste is going, how are they procured, and how can we recycle those devices from customers that are switching phones regularly. And I would say a big one, it's privacy, data privacy. That's a big emerging topic because it's definitely like data is now moving across these networks. Like people send confidential information for banking, for anything through the internet. So internet needs to be safe on the way the infrastructure is made. So for us, we have a lot of teams like really working on the security of that, on the privacy of the data. So the data governance is a big one that also SASB identifies. And in our case, because we have, I would say most of our employees are union, well, most, I would say, I don't want to say a precise number, but easily we have thousands of employees that are field technicians, and what they do is they climb poles, they install like the wires to put the internet and the data. So there's a health and safety issue, like they could get injured. They're touching the same post. At least in Quebec, we have a lot of Hydro-Quebec posts that we also put the telecom network on them. So there's a health and safety risk for them to not get electrocuted. They're still mounting a ladder, so there's a risk of them falling off. So that's a huge focus for us as well. I would say those are like the main topics, like anything related to energy, greenhouse gas emissions, data privacy, waste, the electronic waste, health and safety, security. So I would say those are the primary ones, but for sure there's accompanying ones that go with that.
And for someone who is interested in pursuing a career in ESG or sustainability space, what sort of skills and qualifications do you believe are essential? Let's make it a little bit interesting. Say if your team is hiring, right, for any entry-level job or say mid-level career roles, what sort of skills you or your team or what sort of qualifications you look into?
To me, for ESG right now, the key skills we need is, well, someone that can deal with ambiguity and can maneuver very well in a constantly changing environment. To me, this is key because even myself, I have trouble keeping up with everything that's changing. And there's so much information about ESG, you can easily get overwhelmed and swamped. So someone that's very can be searching answers, that has this habit of reading about it, that's in tune with it. Right now in ESG, there's such a pressure to move forward. There's a lot of urgency to react to all the information, that hiring someone that we need to train them on what is ESG, forget it. At least for me, that wouldn't be my first choice. For me, even for a junior role, I want someone who is already reading on what is ESG, what are the standards, what are we evaluated on. So having this baseline understanding and being quick to react to that, to me, it's a key step. And the second skill to me, I find that's important, is having this ability to influence, because even though all this ESG stuff is happening, right now in Canada, none of this is mandated by the law.
Yeah.
So there's no legal obligation to do anything related to ESG. There are hints now that it will become legal, as we're seeing some evolvement, especially with topics related to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. So, there's a lot of changes, I think, coming, and I think the fact that it will be legally bounded is yet to come. So I think it's coming most definitely. But if we're talking today, it's not mandatory. So you need someone with the skill set to, I call it internal lobbying, but it's kind of like that. It's influencing internally. Why should we do this if there's no legal penalty, there's no legal requirement to do this? So a lot of the job, unfortunately, is convincing teams to change despite that there's no obligation, and explaining to them why we should do it. So even though ESG for students and people that are interested in it seems like an obvious thing to do, for companies that were never urged to produce such importance on ESG over the years and are only being put this pressure in literally less than 2 years ago with this ISSB coming out and a lot of those changes with the what we see with the SEC and anyways all of that. So companies need to self-transform internally, and that takes a huge effort, and internal change management is critical to make this work, and it takes patience. So someone who has this skill set to influence, to kind of pitch why we should do it, that communicates the value in order to bring that internal transformation, to me, that's a key leadership skill that personally I would value tremendously. And obviously maybe a third one accompanying is someone that can still be analytical, because there's a lot of data. Like ESG at the end, you could know everything about soil contamination and what it entails and the scientific weaves of that, and for sure that's useful in some cases, but for ESG is data, is we take the data to inform the decision of investors, because we know that more and more investors are taking into account ESG data to inform how much the company is at risk, and therefore how can they lose or perhaps gain money by investing in a company. So data is the key language. So someone who understands data, who's analytical, who speaks the language of data, is a key skill set as well, I would say.
Interesting. So you mentioned three things. One is that the person should be proactive, very good with the reading, it should come from internal, to keep up to date with the sustainability or the ever changing ESG world. Second is You said ability to influence, but I think it's similar to effective communication, how you can persuade
Hmm.
other business units, right, to please give us the data, but why they should give us the data. And the third one is like having that analytical skill. Maybe we can add like data management also to it,
Hmm.
because again we all are dealing with so much data, especially in the ESG and the sustainability field. So if you can manage the data well and weave a story out of that data, that is, I think, really important. So three
Absolutely.
things that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
put it very sharply, definitely. Yeah, you're right. The influence, it's really a communication skills, um, which at the end that's what you need because yeah, those three skill set to me are key and primordial for in a person's personality and the way that they practice, how they're doing things. So you don't need to be an expert in ESG. I myself, I didn't start in this career and I kind of learned through my career. So you don't need to have worked in this space for years and worked in a specific set, but it's really having this capacity to transform and deal with this chaos and urgency that's happening with the ESG space.
Yeah. And I know like the job market is really hard right now, and so many people are struggling, and so many people want to switch or move to the sustainability or the ESG side from their typical regular job. So, can you share with us some effective strategies for the job seekers, how they can break into the sustainability roles, and how can they make a positive impression during the interviews?
Yeah, in a way, I'm happy that there's so much, let's say, competition in this space for people. So many people are interested to work in this space, whereas me, 10 years ago, this was like not existent. So I see a huge evolution in the space. In a way, I'm happy there's a lot of supply for the demand. But yeah, I understand for students that are starting to search their way in getting a space that it could be competitive and difficult to differentiate. So maybe some tips and tricks is um, when you approach a company, well, find a company that you need to decide what type of facet of ESG you want to work in. Do you want to be maybe special? Because we're talking ESG, but if we're just looking sustainability in general, maybe you want to specialize in waste and e-waste, or maybe circular economy, or food or transport. So you might have a kind of interest in a specific topic of ESG, or maybe it's diversity or whatever. So you could become a specialist or an advisor that really deep dives in a specific ESG topic. If that's the case, and you want to kind of specialize in some topic of sustainability that eventually feeds into the world of ESG, but that's where I would recommend like try to really get involved, like get maybe volunteer experience in something related to this issue. Find organizations where you could get your hands dirty in that. You can maybe work on a school project that's related to this topic where you research a lot on it. So show that you have an interest towards that. But if you're going to a more, like for myself, I see I'm more like maybe a generalist. Like I'm not specialized in a specific topic. I just understand the big picture and where all of this needs to fit into a system that works in the company. So if you're into this more ESG reporting space, that's where you don't need to know everything about even me. I'm not a specialist on every single thing, how to calculate this thing on GHGs or on this thing on waste, or so I don't need to specialize in a specific topic. It's really about understanding the big picture, and it's almost like a strategy role and communications, because you're doing a report. So if maybe you can get involved in something like uh, maybe some volunteer experience, like you don't need to have work experience to apply for a job. You can just show interest, that maybe you write journals for the school, about this topic. You're educating people on it. Maybe you're making podcasts about the topics. You see, Anushka is already a step ahead of you guys just by getting involved into this space, So create your own meaning on being the voice and communicating these things forward. But yeah, I would say it's difficult because it's very competitive and the skill set is a bit flu. Like there's no official training. Oh, I have this ESG certificate, I can apply. Like it doesn't really exist yet. So it's hard to say, oh, go do this course or that course. In my space, I did the fundamentals of sustainable accounting credential. So it's kind of a 2-level course. This could be useful if you're really into kind of how to use the accountant mindset to show value of non-financial data. And if you have time to do this and you're motivated, to me, this is of value to have this, what we call the FSA credential. So there's a level 1, level 2. For me, I did it and it added tremendous value into my job. And yeah, and I'd say present yourself with your brand, like show why you want to do this. For me, it was really a passion for sustainability, and it kind of morphed into what it is today, ESG. But yeah, I would say even little volunteer experience can go a long way.
Yeah, you're right. So in my corporate journey, since past 3 years, I have met so many people from so many different sectors who are now in ESG and sustainability, and most of them like transition from different roles. So say someone is an accountant and now that person is doing GHG accounting because the common factor or the common passion is accounting, and also sustainability is added to it, or the greenhouse gas part is added to it. Similarly, people are in say transportation, but now they care about the environment or the sustainability. Now they are into the sustainable transportation. So rather than focusing on the fossil fuel run cars, they are more focused on the electric side or hybrid vehicles. So it's really interesting how our skills that we gained during our regular jobs can be helpful to move into the field of ESG or sustainability. It's just we need to focus a little bit more on the ESG or the sustainability side to understand what is current, what is going on, and to keep us updated with the latest
That's very
trends.
true, and to even show an example of that is, as I was saying at the beginning, we're maybe 20 people that really our full-time work is like just focusing on a sustainability or ESG or an environment topic, but across the company, there's hundreds of employees that in their job they touch upon something with sustainability. To your example,
Yeah.
so that's very, very possible. Like just the finance team we worked with, we're talking multiple individuals that now have to learn about, to your point, what are greenhouse gas emissions, or in the transport team now has to learn about electrification. So any department is shifting towards that. I feel eventually every job will touch upon something that's more better for the planet, better for the people. That's just like the way society is maturing towards right now. In more this Canadian landscape, I would say, in the Western world. So really, yeah, definitely. So if you want to be an accountant, a lawyer, this, that, you can find your touch with sustainability. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean it needs to be in your title. So even the nature of the company, like, do you want to work for a company that is doing something that's sustainable, maybe selling solar energy or developing electric vehicles, so there's a lot of ways that you can feel like you're contributing. It's maybe understanding what you really want. Do you want to just contribute to something that aligns to your values? If that's the case, like it's not just ESG, it's like hundreds of different options outside ESG that you can find this value you connect to. But if it's really an interest on like the mix of finance and the non-finance and how that gives value to a business, then it's maybe more in the I see the accounting, the legal, communications, and sustainability teams shaping a lot around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that the landscape is changing and it's evolving, because 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there was like no space for ESG or sustainability. Or even if there are ESG or sustainability teams, they are like at the corner of a room,
Mm.
right? Like they were not taking the main stage. So it's time to wrap up our interview. So one last question, which I call as like a bonus question. What's one sustainability myth or misconception that you find particularly amusing or say frustrating, and how do you debunk it?
Very good question. I'm not sure if the audience will be pleased with this answer, but to me, going into ESG or the way it seems it's being perceived from the outside is ESG and sustainability. It's like the dream job. It's like that's where the value is being created. That's where it's like everyone wants to be there. And I compare this to it's like the Barbie world. Like, oh wow, that like the ESG team is like the coolest team in the company. It's often everyone wants to be in that team. Everyone wants to be involved. But to be honest, once you enter this space from the inside, it's really not a Barbie world, like in a sense that it's very chaotic and disorganized and to be frank, everyone at the same time across the world, with the standards coming in and the changes and the focus being so strong on ESG for everyone, and just a couple years ago, it's making everyone a bit running like chickens without a head. And it's really
Yeah,
like there's this kind of a fatigue being created because there's so much to focus on. It's just like it almost feels like from one day to the other, boom, like this took like so much emphasis, so much time, and there's a lot of things to do. And most often the teams are very small and they absorb a lot of pressure for the amount of the tasks and the evolution and the maturity it needs to take. And there's a lot of like tremendous amount of uncertainty and movement. It feels very, very unstable. In a sense, it feels like you're walking on quicksand. It's like it's but on the external, and maybe that's the irony, you have to look like, yeah, we know what we're doing this and all of that. But
yeah,
internally, to be frank, it's really okay, we need to do this. What are we doing? Are we doing enough of that? Is it good enough? What are others doing? Like you're always kind of a bit unsure or overwhelmed with what needs to be done, that it's uh, I think it's very normal. So I'm not saying that to scare anyone, but it's part of the journey that we haven't reached that maturity yet. And I love to compare
yeah,
it to the financial world because financial standards, financial reports, like financial statements and all of that, they follow a very rigorous statement and they have a very rigorous process. Like for anyone that studies in finance accounting, you'll know that this is like, it's like the law, there's a book to follow and you need to follow very precisely a guideline. And it took a lot of maturity. It took at least 30 years, multiple decades for it to arrive to where it is today. But at the beginning, when these standards didn't exist, it was probably just as chaotic as it is now in the ESG space. And I think that's what's happening now, is the ESG space, maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, we will be, or maybe less, I don't know, I don't want to set projections that are certain, but we will be as mature. We will have this thing like ESG controller. We will account for everything. Everything will be audited, double check, triple check. It will be in a IT system. Everyone, the whole company is gonna be rolled in it. But until we get there, we're still like juvenile. Like I see a lot of companies that for the first time they publish a role in ESG or sustainability that they didn't ever have. So I would say the job is, to be honest, it's a high stress job. You need to look like it's a bit you're a duck. On the surface, you're calm, you look like everything's going well, but under the water, the feet are going like this.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that. That would be maybe my insight or myth, So you're not going into sustainability. Maybe before it was seen as, oh yeah, we're the tree huggers, we love the planet and Earth Day, and yeah, a lot of people that are passionate in sustainability are migrating to a more ESG accounting and governance role, but it takes a lot of rigorousness. It's for the first time I feel ESG and sustainability is being taken seriously to the point we want to
Yeah.
build it in maturity. It's no longer the sideline reports just to look good for marketing. Now it's really, we're
Yeah.
taking into account your information to decide if we invest in your company. Like this is big. And some people put like thousands, millions of dollars in their decision making. Like I'm eager if ever in a few years we sit back again in this podcast and see how much it has changed. Just in a few
Yeah.
years, I guarantee it will be something else than what it is today. So it's fun because you're learning a lot and you gain a lot of experience. So even if you don't have experience, to me, often you see jobs, oh yeah, 5 to 10 years experience. I feel in just a few years of doing this. So yes, I would say uh,
Yeah.
don't give up, but be ready for a roller coaster ride.
And that's a wrap on episode 1 of our Green Career series. Big thanks to Monika for being such a generous and insightful guest. I mean, who knew ESG in telecom could be so full of unexpected twists, strategy, and even a bit of creativity? If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's that your path into sustainability doesn't have to be perfectly linear. You can start in operations, project management, or literally something completely unrelated, and still find your way into work that makes a real impact. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a solid. Hit that follow or subscribe button, leave a rating or review if you're feeling generous, and share it with a friend who's trying to figure out their own green career path. You can also find more resources, guest highlights, and career tips in the description below. And hey, if you're currently job hunting, deep in existential crisis mode, or just here for the vibes, you are not alone. Honestly, I have been there. A lot of us have. And hopefully, these chats will help you find your footing, or at least give you something to think about over your next cup of coffee. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode, where we are diving into the world of sustainability communication with a guest who is passionate about making complex green messages clear and inspiring. And you definitely don't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing that purpose.